wrestling is fun. People are valuable.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Fresh, and stand back for another interview. This time, I'm joined by a name you'll definitely know. I'm joined by the one and only Cam Hawkins or CEEHAWK. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, my man.
So, if we take this back, where do you first discover wrestling as an overall fan?
Gosh, we're talking maybe like 1989, 1990.
Mm,
I'm from Southern Maryland, so that was
mm,
like WCW territory, right? Um, Me and my dad used to watch WCW Saturday night like every week that I was with him. My parents got divorced when I was really young, so I go to my
mm.
dad's apartment. We watch WCW Saturday night, and we'd watch Swamp Thing. It was great. I used to love it.
What a combination.
Yeah, seriously, right? And then I used to watch WWF Superstars at my grandparents' house, and then actually my mother was like an airman in the Air Force when I was like young, and so when my parents got divorced, she needed a second job, so
Mm.
she got a job at the gosh, is it USA Arena? It's like our local. It's where the Washington Wizards used to play,
Ah,
and the Washington Capitals used to play, right? Um, so she was an usher there. So she would take me to shows when she couldn't find a babysitter. So I saw like Hogan and Flair in a cage at a house show when I was like 6.
was this when they were trialing it for the? I can't remember what mania it was, but they was trialing it, and apparently it didn't do very well on the house
Yeah,
show circuit. Is that right?
it was heat. Yeah, they were trying to heat it up. Yeah, so this is like
Mm,
91, 92. Yeah, they were trying to heat it up. It didn't quite work out, but yeah, that's my earliest like live memory of an
mm,
experience in wrestling. Because my parents had the sense to get divorced.
mm. You
Yeah.
know, when you talk about your parents and getting divorced, did you? And this might sound like a very deep question,
Mhm.
considering we first were just doing this interview. But did you use sort of wrestling? Because I know I did, because my parents are divorced as well. Did you use wrestling as sort of a connection with your dad, sort of thing? Because I know I did.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really interesting. Like, so I'm 37. My dad's birthday was 2 weeks ago. So if I'm 37, my dad just turned 65, I want to say.
Hmm.
Um, and my mother got remarried, and my stepfather was military as well, so we moved around a lot. So especially after we moved away from Maryland when I was 8, I didn't see my dad as much as I used to. We talk every couple of weeks. So yeah, it was definitely like when we would have conversations, a lot of times wrestling was the connector, because like
Mm.
him and my granddad, my uncle, they still kind of followed the product at least for a few years. So that was, yeah, definitely a connector with me and my dad. Absolutely.
That's a very deep question, and
It's a
uh,
good question. I love
I'm
good
proud of
questions. You can get a lot
myself.
of them.
I'm proud of myself for being like, oh, cool. But anyway, so you talk about who you talked about their all members of your family all being into wrestling.
Mhm.
Who was the member that was like, Cam, you need to check this out? Do you remember?
I think it was my grandfather. Seriously, man, my grandfather was always a big wrestling fan. Wendell Hawkins, God rest your soul, he passed away a couple of years ago. It was even like I would call my grandparents' house like as an adult. I remember my grandfather telling me about like a barbershop argument about The Rock being black. Like, because there was somebody in there that didn't know. And so, like, of course, this is like a bunch of old guys. They're not using Google to pull up pictures. They're like, The Rock's dad is black. And they're just arguing back and forth. But then my grandfather was always into it, man. He was like my grandfather was a man of the people. Like he worked for the state of Maryland for years and years and years. He'd show up to kids' graduations who he'd only met 2 or 3 times. Like he was everywhere and everything. Wendell Hawkins was an amazing man. But yeah, man, he was always into it and would try to keep up with it in a way that like would keep me engaged, like even as an adult. So yeah, it's my grandfather, absolutely.
Mm. So you talk about he would keep you engaged even as an adult. So do you remember any examples where he was like, even as you got older, where he was like, I know you haven't watched wrestling in a while. But do you remember any examples where he was like, Cam, you need to check this out?
Yeah, it was never really like, have you seen this individual moment or show? It would be like little points like talking about The Rock, or have you seen Brock Lesnar or Stone Cold's a band, like stuff like that. You know what I mean? It was
Mm.
never like one specific moment of him tuning in live, but he was always like adjacent to it, to the point where we could talk about it.
Mm. So I understand what you're saying completely there. I was trying to segue, but I really couldn't think of one. I do apologize.
I'm sorry to break it. I'm sorry to break it.
No, it's totally cool. I was trying to think of a segue where it was like, but when you discovered your own fandom, how do you start consuming the media and things like that?
So we moved to Wyoming when I was 8. My stepfather, God bless him, is like the biggest nerd in the world, like Star Trek, Star Wars, comic books. Used to make like model airplanes, and he was like all into that. And so like we had to have cable, because like all the shows he like wants to watch are coming on USA and Sci-Fi and TNT and all that. So we had that. So I got to watch wrestling, right? So we lived in a 2-story house on Greer Boulevard across the street from the Food Bonanza,
Mm.
when we were in Wyoming. And so it was like the top story, because in Texas, well, in America, some places have basements and some places don't.
Mm.
Like once you get further southwest, you get less and less more basements because flooding, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like in Wyoming, which has no water around it, you're going to, if you live on the top floor and then you have like a big basement with like a den and all that.
Mm.
So every Monday night, man, I'm down in the den. I'm flipping back and forth, Nitro Raw, Nitro Raw, Nitro Raw. And you know, like my parents are like, they doing their own thing, they're working or they're watching like the big TV upstairs. Nobody ever came and bothered me unless it was time to like eat dinner. So I'm
Mm.
just downstairs, like I'm flipping through it every Monday night. It was amazing. And like my because of how big of a nerd my stepdad was, we had a bunch of VCRs to record shows. So like I would try to record one if I just wanted to watch the other, and then go back and watch it afterwards. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember a moment that a couple of things? Do you remember with your stepdad was wanting the big TV, as you called it? Do
Mm-hmm.
you ever remember a moment where maybe you guys clashed, where you was like, "But this big match is happening. I want to watch it on
Yeah.
the big TV," and then
I
vice
you,
versa. Do you also
yeah.
just while I remember, I do apologize. Do you also remember a moment where maybe you over recorded something where he was trying to record, and maybe wrestling overtaped over Star Trek, or vice versa?
Yeah, I never messed up the tape. No, 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 no. I was a pacifist, man. I'm not causing no problems. It was great. I'll be down in my den. It's just me watching my shows. They be upstairs watching their shows. No, no, no problems. No issues. No, sir. No, sir. Mm-mm.
Hmm. What about was there never a moment where you was like, I want the big TV? You never had that moment then, no?
You know, I as a kid, um, it changed once I became a teenager and lived in Texas. It was
Hmm.
different. But as a kid, like my parents were very much like, we don't know these other kids and their families. You can go to their house, they're not coming to our house. Like it was like that.
Yeah.
So nah, man, like that downstairs TV was mine. It was
Yeah.
that was my happy space. Nah, no way, nobody bothered me. Again, unless it was time to eat dinner and do some chores, man, I was good. And it was crazy. So nobody's ever asked me this stuff. This is cool. So like it's a big basement downstairs, but there's a computer room off to the side and like this really cool like jacuzzi bathtub. I don't know why we had that. But then you go upstairs and it's living room, dining room, kitchen, and then there's like 3 or 4 bedrooms off to the side. And so I had my own room, but I'd never had a TV in my room. I didn't have a TV in my room until like my junior year of high school.
Oh wow.
Um, and so yeah, but like the downstairs was understood, like that's where Cam's gonna be. He's gonna watch his shows. Nah, man, it was never no problems, never any interruption. And I never like I was so into the programming, it never mattered what I was watching it on, right?
Hmm.
Like I haven't bought a new TV in like 8 years. My
Mm.
TV is like, I think it's like still 720. Like I'm good. I just need the content, baby. I don't need it to jump off the screen as long as I can see it.
I know exactly what you mean there. Do you think that's something that's maybe missed in today's wrestling media? Not media, but today's wrestling fandom,
Mm.
where people are like, I need to watch this on the biggest thing. It's like, do you ever feel like kids, you
Yeah.
should feel lucky to just be able to watch this? Because
Size
in
and
our
scope is
generation, it was a lot
interesting.
harder.
Yeah, like of course, like technology being what it is, I understand the desire to want to see things of the highest quality. But for me, like the thing I remember is what's happening, not how it looked. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
totally.
I'm super into like being able to talk about what I saw, not how clear I saw it. Like there's a scene SummerSlam with Jay Uso, like basically like raising his arms to the crowd, everybody doing it with him. Listen, that's as good in 4K as it would be in
Great
280.
new TV.
Like, yeah, I'm saying like, nah, it's great, man. It's great. You can watch that on a Game Boy. It was great. Like you'll still feel it. So yeah, I think that I'll tell you what, I do think this though. It took WWE a minute um to get the right settings to have their HD look right. Like I remember when they
Oh
first went
yeah,
WWE HD, it was almost like it was too fast. It was too clear,
it
and
was
it
quite
no longer felt like
grainy
a
as
show.
well, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
like if you I don't know if they still do it, but like on WWE 2K19, they would have a 90s filter so that your screen, when you recreated like Nitro or Raw or early SmackDown or Thunder, it looked like the same definition as it did previously. So like I always appreciated that. Like that was my favorite time. I don't love it more now because it looks better, you know?
Mm. I know exactly what you mean there. So you talk about that was your favorite time in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever, you spoke about there, you were a channel flipper.
Mm-hmm.
You would start with Nitro, you would start with, or you would start with Raw. What was the main one you started with when in that point? And do you ever
I was
remember a moment that you flipped and was like, ah, I'm going back because there's cool things happening?
listen, man, I was a WCW kid, man. Um, especially and I loved Brett. Brett was my guy early on. Kurt Hennig was my guy early on, but listen, I was gonna go where Scott Hall was. Like that was me early on. You know what I
Mm.
mean? When he jumped ship, I needed to see Nitro and needed to see what he was doing in NWO. Um, it was such a jump back and forth, especially when Austin and Rock hit the scene. But really, I wanted to see the cruiserweights, man. Like I
Mm.
was a Juventud Guerrera super fan. I thought he was incredible. When he would hit the damn Hoovy driver and hit he was doing the 450 early on, man. I love Juventud Guerrera. And so I found myself focusing more on Nitro, but like if, and this is no disrespect, if like Mike Enos is in a match, I'm gonna jump over and see what they're doing on Raw.
I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, no shade. I'm gonna jump over and see what's going on Raw. But yeah, I was really into the luchadors outside of like what the NWO was doing. So WCW was definitely getting most of my time until like Austin and Rock got hot.
Mm. So when you talk about there as well, WCW getting most of your time, how does your fandom change in 2001 then, when
So,
WCW goes out of business?
hey man, you gone. You know what I'm saying? Like you okay, even as a kid, because I was born in 85, right? So this is when I'm 15, 16,
Mm.
when WCW is going under. Look, man, you could see the quality of the show drop when Russo came on. I didn't know it was because of Vince Russo. I knew that shit was trash though. I was like, this isn't great. Even though like I tried to stay like into it, even with like the natural born thrillers and the new blood. Like when they said Buff Bagwell was new blood, I'm like, dog, he's been here longer than he's been here since like
Yeah.
95. What are you talking about? New blood. So it was so contrived, even before I knew what the word contrived meant. But like again, when they went out of business, by that point, I'm already basically watching WWF, WWE almost strict. Like they're the priority by that point, right?
Mm.
You know, and in like a weird, like super kayfabe way, Jeff Jarrett was just beating everybody and finding ways to beat everybody with a guitar. I felt he was too dominant. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, that's when I really got into Booker T as an act, like being world champ. We're talking like, 99, 2000, specifically Bash at the Beach 2000. So that kind of had me kind of back locked in. But listen, man, like I had to watch, and God rest his soul. You watch your favorite wrestler in Scott Hall, he's falling apart on TV.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know what
Because didn't they turn his
addiction
substance
is.
abuse into a storyline?
Yeah, yeah. Like I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what addiction is at that point. I don't know what like alcoholism is at that point, but I know something's not right. I know this isn't the guy that I've been seeing. If
Hmm.
for no other reason than the energy, the life doesn't seem to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so it was even at that point I knew that it was a sinking ship. So yeah, it wasn't an easy transition for me because I, even though I had a favorite, I was into both. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So when they go out of business completely, do you sort of switch to strictly WWE, or are you one of those that's trying to find out what other wrestling's out there other than the two major companies?
Man, so again, this is like a one. Listen, man, I'm in Texas. I'm playing football year round. I'm dating girls. No, there was no time. Like
No,
there,
I
there
understand.
you get your 2 hours of Raw, and that's it. 2 hours of Raw, and I'm gonna watch SmackDown. And but like you got my Monday, you got my Thursday. So like it's different everywhere. But to kind of try to explain like sports in Texas specifically, because it's like this everywhere in
Is it the
America now and
equivalent
other
of
places.
soccer in London?
Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking like you your lunch period, your fourth period, if you have 7 periods a day, fourth period is athletics. So you have technically football practice then. Um, you go to lunch, you have two more classes or three more classes. You get out of school at, let's say, 4 o'clock.
Mm.
4:20, you're on the field, you're practicing until 6 or 7, right? So I get home. I'm watching again, I'm trying to watch Raw on Mondays. I'm trying to watch SmackDown Thursday or Friday or whenever it was. But game day is Friday or Saturday or sometimes Thursday. And so all the other time that you have when you get home, you either doing homework or you trying to see what restaurant you can meet the girls at. You know what I mean? So at
Yeah.
that point, man, there was no time to really consume anything else. It was really strictly WWF WWE at that point.
Mm. Do you did you ever have any? This is a personal question, but did you ever have any aspirations to play football after high school?
Yo, I was 140 pounds soaking wet. So I was like a year younger than everybody. So I didn't put on weight until my freshman year of college. And
Hmm.
so it was like, nah, football was great. Football kept me in shape. I loved playing it, but nah, man, when it was done, it was done. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I didn't have any dreams of doing it. I didn't really find like aggression, like the aggression you would need to be really, really good. I don't think I had that until I became an adult. I was a kid. And so it
A
took me a
late
while to really
bloomer, I
get.
believe is the term.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, again, I was in great shape, had 92 abs. I looked fantastic. But it was, football was like what we did. It wasn't what I loved as like to play. It was what you were supposed to do. It was
I'm
fun.
trying to think of the equivalent in England, but I do know what you're talking about.
So, and the other thing, again, another reason I never really got into like anything else at the time is because you play year round down here. So football is basically July to December, right?
Mm.
But once January hits, when you come back to school, you're either running track or you're powerlifting, right? So if you run track, that's basically February to May. If you power lift, that's like January till May. But when June hits, you're
Football
already
again.
starting. Y'all are working out. Like you're working out with your buddies to get ready for July. And so it was a cycle like all 4 years. So yeah, it was. That's why I gained so much damn weight my freshman year of college because nobody told me to work out anymore. So yeah, but it was such a cycle. Like you could only make time for so few things, and so yeah, man, it was strictly what they were doing in New York at that point for sure.
I understand. Have you ever had a moment where you were like, okay, I'm gonna put wrestling on the back burner for now. Like I'm not gonna consume anything.
Yeah. So again, my stepfather, the best thing he gave me was that fandom does not have to stop for like social life. So he was when he joined the Air Force, he went to the academy at first. He ran track all through middle school and high school. He boxed in the Air Force, and he took up bodybuilding once he like left the academy. And so kind of what he taught me was like you can still be like cool social guy who lifts weights and love your hobbies. And so I never felt like I had to stop. Like every Monday night, man, when I got to college, I had this little box TV that we used to put on top of the
Oh, I
refrigerator.
remember these.
And yo, we would leave that door open. Like we propped the dorm room door open, and people would just come by and watch. Like I'd be with my buddies watching wrestling. Like people would just come by and watch. So no, it was never I never felt like I had to stop any of my hobbies. Like I got boxes of comic books around here. I got toys around here. I got sneakers everywhere. Like it was never a thing where um I felt like I had to shut down like what I loved because I felt like people were going to accept me either way. I think a lot of people dropped wrestling the same way they dropped Santa Claus. You know what I mean? Because they were like, oh, this is a childish thing. And if people know this is something I like, they'll treat me different. I never thought that. You know what I'm saying? Like I am who I am. And so yeah, never, never.
That is a very cool way of looking at it. I'm not gonna lie, and I've never thought of it that way, but that is very cool.
Yeah.
So you talk about being strictly a New York guy for the majority of your life. When do you discover there's wrestling outside of the bubble, sort of thing? And when do you sort of start consuming wrestling outside of the WWE?
Yeah, it's probably 0809 when I start reading wrestling news sites because I'm like, oh, there's like TNA and it's Jeff Jarrett. I hated Jeff Jarrett, but in the right way. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I wanted to check that out. So you find out about AJ Styles and Monty Brown, and so I'm like, I'm kind of in touch with that. Um, I always give credit to Sean Radican from PW Torch because whereas like of course like Wade and Bruce they're covering WWE and TNA for the most part. Sean Radican is covering uh PWG, you know what I'm saying, and like these smaller promotions like around America. And so that's what kind of let me know like this thing is bigger than I knew, the New Japans and all that. So like even when I was watching WCW, Mike Tenay would give you all this information on Japanese wrestling, but I was like, ain't no way I could watch that. They're not on, USA, TNT, TBS. Like, when am I gonna find that? So it was like, yeah, the late 2000s. Late 2000s sounds so old, but like, yeah,
it does now, doesn't it?
08, 09, 2010. That's probably when I start realizing like this thing is a lot bigger and more accessible than I knew. Yeah.
You you brought up there something very interesting that if you had access to stuff you
Yeah.
back then you might have known what they were. So
Mhm.
we have a DeLorean and you're able to bring the technology we have into 2000 or something like that.
Mhm.
Where do you think your fandom would be in say 2001 if we had the technology that we had now?
Yeah, yo, when I found out, um, I was a huge Ultimo Dragon fan. I loved Ultimo Dragon. I thought he was just incredible. Um, Probably a lot of those like Super J Cups, like if I could have seen, Jericho at that time, Eddie Guerrero at that time, That's really what I would have been locked into, because that stuff was hard hitting and violent and so athletic. Like I wish I had seen more Owen Hart stuff before WWF, because I one of my wrestling regrets, I did not appreciate how good he was while he was alive. A lot of what I saw from him that I really liked was after he had passed. And so
Mm,
I definitely would have been locked into more of his stuff. But yeah, man, Eddie Guerrero early, and really, I would have watched a lot more ECW
mm,
for that same reason. The Dean Malenkos and the Perry Saturns, and I wish I could have seen Ray and Psychosis when it happened in real time.
mm.
Absolutely, that stuff for sure.
You brought up there, obviously, where your fandom would be uh, it- back in the day if we had the technology we have now. Before we get into your work within the wrestling media, because there's a lot to cover there,
Mhm.
where is your current wrestling fandom taking your work out? Where do you think your current fandom is?
Um, so I think it's really mostly in WWE. Um, and I think some of that is it's the access that I have to WWE, and not just like on TV. Like I the fact that I can talk to a lot of the talent and people in corporate about what it is they're trying to do, what it is they're going for, what motivates them to be there. I think seeing that play out in front of a really large audience takes up a lot of my fandom. But I'm also like, I'm super invested in what AEW does, because I do think it's really productive to have an alternative. And
Mm,
it's also like watching Tony Khan figure it out is really interesting to me, because as somebody who like Tony Khan is like a lot of us, but with a whole bunch more money. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like he was
yeah.
on the same websites, on the same boards, but he has like the ability to bring that stuff that he was thinking and seeing to fruition. So it's if I had to put a percentage on it, probably 70% WWE, 30% AEW. But it's also like you got to start to figure in the job. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
I think that the conversations I've been able to have with AEW talent have been way more interesting in the sense of I think they get to be a bit looser with what they say,
mm.
without having to satisfy 8 different bosses and a whole bunch of different checks and balances. So there is that part of it too. But like to WWE is still, I can go talk to somebody at a like in public about WWE, or I can like reach out to like text my dad, my uncles about WWE, and that still be a conversation. As that changes, I think maybe the percentage changes, but it's still mostly WWE right now for sure.
I understand what you're saying completely there because I believe, and I don't know what you think of this. Most people I know, if you say wrestling, they go, "Oh, that WWE stuff."
Yeah,
For
it's
example,
ubiquitous still. That is it. It's and this is certainly no shade to AEW, because I watch AEW every week, but there are still people who really like wrestling who do not know that AEW is a thing. And
yeah,
like again, that's not no shade. Like a lot of people don't know that there's a big three basketball league with a bunch of former NBA players. It's really fun. It's really cool. They just don't know about it because it's not the main thing that they see. And so yeah, like it's still WWE is still synonymous with wrestling. It's what people go to, and so with what I do and how I do it, that's still going to be the primary thing.
I understand. So you talk about what you do and how you do it. So how does Cam get involved in this crazy world that is wrestling media?
Man, so Chuck Mikatinik. That is not a name that I think anybody on here would know. Chuck Mikatinik was a local sports anchor when I was growing up in San Antonio. Um, I went to William Howard Taft High School. So if you guys watch Psych, I went to the same high school as James Roday. Um,
Um,
He's a couple. We do. I think he graduated '99 though, so we weren't there at the same time. Um, but I went to William Howard Taft High School, but I actually went to Communications Arts High School, which was a magnet school within the school.
Mm,
So, as a part of our senior project, we have to do what we call an externship, where we have to get with somebody in the community about the job that they do, about what we aspire to, and make a project.
mm.
So Chuck was our local sports guy on our local Fox affiliate. And I think I talked to Chuck like once. I was a lazy student. I made great grades, and the worst thing that could happen to a smart person is to do well because then they won't put in the time. so like
Yeah.
I talked to him like once. I made a dope radio project that I recorded. I got an A on it, and that was that. But Chuck, it was a great conversation that we had. He was helpful in the ways I needed him to be helpful. But I always wanted to do like news. I always wanted to do like news broadcasting. That was always a thing. So I do the project. Project goes great. I get into University of Texas, hook 'em horns, and my goal is to get into the School of Communication. But I'm the laziest damn student you've ever seen. So first semester, academic probation.
What?
Literally.
How?
I was so lazy. All I wanted to do, I was just partying and, having sex and playing Xbox. Like,
Yep.
party, have sex, play Halo. That's all you did.
In
So,
that order?
well, it depends on the day. Not that anybody cares because I'm not going to get into details about the story, but I graduated on a Saturday. I moved into my dorm on a Monday because I went the first summer, and a young lady I had been seeing at night, the back half of my senior year, she definitely drove up to the dorm that Monday night. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was already set on a bad path. but
Yeah.
so by the time I straightened it out, I didn't have the grades at the time to get into the communication school there. So I stuck with liberal arts. I did English, and I found out, hey, I can write. Like I didn't know, but I was like, oh, I can write. Like this is kind of easy. So I kind of kept that in the back burner. And so when I when I graduated, was looking for hobbies because what happened was when you go to a school like UT that's in Austin, most of your friends are from Dallas or from Houston. When they graduate, they move back, you know. I didn't have that same attachment to San Antonio. I didn't move to San Antonio until 99.
Yeah.
So well, wait, I was 11. So no, I moved there when it was 97. But like I went to middle school for 2 years, and then I graduated high school, and I was like, well, like I don't want to like be here. Like, so when I graduated UT, I just stayed. And so a bunch of my friends are gone. I'm starting a new career. I was working at a different college in the financial aid office. So I was looking for hobbies, man. Like I was on the internet, seeing what's going on. So I found Pro Wrestling Torch.
Mm.
And Travis Bryant and Bardre Purnell had this show called the East Coast Cast, which was just two black guys talking about wrestling. And I was like, hey, they sound like me when I talk to my friends about stuff. And so when they got a call-in show, I used to call. It would be 5:30 to 7. I used to call, and they liked the points I was making to the point where I became cool with them, and they started to ask me to co-host. So I'm like co-hosting like a live internet radio show now. And I'm like, whoa.
How did I
So
get here?
yeah, and so let me jump back for a second. Um, oh no, this will be a little bit forward, but as I'm doing it, like it's not a big deal to me. I'm like, this is cool. I like this. I used to watch Pro Wrestling Report with Damian Nelson, and I have never been so impressed with a person. Um, Damian used to get on there with a suit and glasses, and he talked about wrestling like it was the most serious thing in the whole world. They had a set, they had a backdrop. It was incredible. And I was like, okay, so I wanted to be a broadcaster, right? Like I didn't work out in like traditional news because I didn't pursue that path. I'm on a show, and I'm seeing that, wow, you can really do this as a serious thing, like watching Damien do it. So yeah, man, it was from there. It was like I have this I call it an inferiority complex where I feel like I have to contribute and have to show how I'm contributing in order for me to feel like I belong.
Yep.
So what happened was um I'm doing the East Coast cast, but I'm like, this is Travis's. This is Dre's. Like, I'm not doing enough. So I started to reach out to Wade and was like, hey, I want to write about something. Like, I know you have like op-eds on the website. I want to write. So I wrote about Kofi Kingston challenging uh Daniel Bryan for the title. And the timeline's weird because I was writing before that, but I wrote that and then I really went into detail about what I thought Kofi represented and why I thought he was important.
Mm.
And this is also when Twitter starts to become like a real thing. And I think I was just talking about stuff in a way that there's a joke that you're reading, but you also see the context of what I'm saying.
Mm.
And so my man Kevin at Fansided DDT reached out to me and was like, hey, I'd love for you to write for the site. Like just whatever you want to write about. I was like, cool. So I think I wrote about Jim Cornette saying racist shit on NWA, and then white people hated me for a while. That you expect that, it's fine.
Yeah.
And
Was
then
this when he got the? Was this when he was asked to resign from the NWA
yeah.
because of
And
that?
what's
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
interesting, what I said was he shouldn't resign. I said, like, this is a taped show. So Billy Corgan or whoever else, that's management. They
Could have been
heard
edited
it.
out.
You know what I'm saying? They heard it and decided it was okay. You know who you're hiring. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know who you're hiring. The reason you produce it is to cut that kind of stuff out. He didn't do nothing but be himself. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Mm.
that was that. But yeah, it was to circle back because I don't mean to totally bogart this thing. But
Nah, that's cool.
yeah, but really what got me was I was looking for something to do other than just watch the show. I found something, and every step of the way, whoever's content I was taking part of, eventually wanted me to be part of the content. Oh yeah, well, that's what it was.
Mm. You talked about there whoever's content you're working for wanted you to be part of the content. If you were to give someone advice on like this is how you get there to be a traditional,
Mm-hmm.
like to be in the position I'm in, what would the advice be that you would give someone?
Stop being dickheads on the internet is the biggest advice. Um, you are not, and people look at Jim Cornette and Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff, and there's a bunch of other names you can throw in there. They think being snarky about a company or a wrestler or something like that is going to endear them in some type of way to these websites. Like they think they can be shock jocks. Like
Mm.
Jim Cornette is from a different time.
And also, he's got a name brand.
Exactly. Like
Is
you
that the
have a
right word?
brand that you came in with. And so you've shown your worth. Eric Bischoff can say whatever he wants to say about them 83 weeks because he was there. And even if he lost a bunch of money on the back end, he made a bunch of people a bunch of money and he has given you great memories.
Mm.
Vince Russo, who and the weird thing is, I inherited a lot of beefs from working for the Torch because one thing about me, the people who invest in me and take a chance on me, I ride with them. And so like me and Jim Cornette, we can never be friends. Like we can't really have a conversation because of the things he said about like the families of the people I care about. You know what I mean? Like You can't do that, you know. But again, even if I can't be cool with him, it does not mean I don't understand his value and his worth and what he means to people. So my biggest advice would be you can't treat this thing like you have some cachet. You know what I mean? Like,
until you've earned it almost.
yeah, and even when you've earned it, it's 2023. Like, you're not an old white man. You know what I mean? Like, even if, like, listen, I think I've written lately, and this is more my style of writing, not volume or who I wrote it for. I think over the last year, I've written some of the most interesting things in wrestling. I really think that. Listen, I I wrote about Sting, and to me, it's this really, really cool and to everybody, it's like this super cool thing. I went to WrestleCon and saw Tony Storm and told her thank you for the interview. It was a great like thing to write about. She had no idea who I was and didn't remember the conversation or the article. And so, like, listen, you know, you can do these things and they can be really dope, but like, listen, yeah, you got to remain humble. Like,
To some people, it might just be another thing in their life.
Dog, that was just one morning she had to wake up too early. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My advice would be you got to stay humble. You can't burn these bridges. And if your friends, I do not mean your wrestling friends, if your friends don't think it's dope, it's not dope. Like, seriously,
Meaning,
your content should be good enough. And this is more for writing, not necessarily for like video content or interview content, because that doesn't always touch bases. If your friends in real life do not think your writing is good, your writing is not good. Like, it should be able to touch people who don't care about wrestling. The words and the ideas should jump off the page. So you should run your writing through people who don't care about wrestling to see if it's good. I genuinely think
I know exactly what you mean there. So obviously, you talk about how much writing you've done over this past year and things like that, and how much writing you do. How do you make sure that Cam is still a fan of wrestling? Like, how do you avoid the burnout of wrestling? How do you remain a fan?
that.
Things like that.
Um, I've always expressed to any of the editors I've had that I'm a fan of people. You know, so like I think Bianca Belair is incredible. I really think she's incredible. Um, when I found out I was going to interview her for an article, the first thing that I did, um, so I always like I don't pre-write. I always have a couple of questions, like 5 bullet points that I want to talk to you about. So I knew that Bianca ran track. Um, I knew that, you know, All American athlete, makes her own gear. We got on the interview. The first thing I asked her was, who was the first person to beat you in a race? And I'm talking for 7 minutes or so. She just goes, right?
Mm.
And she's telling me this super detailed story about her losing the race and her literally quitting track and then her coming back and the girl who beat her introducing her to the other girls as her best friend, even though they'd only ever raced together. And I was like, oh, so was this like in high school? She was like, nope, I was 5. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get you. Now I understand you. So what I did was she tells me the girl's name, like her first and last name. So I Google her name. I find out she's an attorney in Tennessee. I'm looking up all her information. And so my whole first paragraph is dedicated to Janae and not Bianca. And so when I get to WrestleMania and we're doing media, the article literally comes out the morning of media. So I see Bianca, and me and Bianca, we'd had dinner together before we'd interviewed in San Antonio for an event. Like, in dinner together, I mean like at the same table dinner together. And so when we jumped on the interview, she knew who I was. So when I get to media, she's like, okay, what's up? And we say, what's up? I literally show her the article. She reads the first paragraph and immediately sends it to her best friend. Like, because again, people are what's interesting, right? Wrestling is a television show. I
Yeah.
love that I know more about what goes into wrestling now, but wrestling is a television show. The people involved are what's important to me, right? Um, Wrestling is fun. People are valuable. And so as long as people are wrestling, until they go all rock'em sock'em robots, that's how I stay interested because like Bianca Belair is a fascinating person to me. Um, Ricky Starks is, you know, there's probably nobody I've met in wrestling that I'm more alike from a creative standpoint. Like how we see the world and the things we want out of the world and how we respond, whether we get them or not. Right. And so when I know that about Rick and I get to see Rick weekly on TV, I know where that energy is coming from. Right. Um, Spending some time with like the Usos and Naomi, I understand the energy. I understand the pressure. You know what I mean? Like that's really how I stay interested because I'm genuinely concerned with the well-being of people. And so watching them navigate not only their lives, but the 2 or 3 hours on TV a week, and really their 30 minutes to an hour a week on TV, and how everything, the whole summation of everything they've done translates to that time. That's how I stay interested because that don't die.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean there. What about the burnout side of it? How do you sort of put yourself in the headspace to go, right, I've done this phenomenal interview, for example. Now I need to write about it, or vice versa. I've got this interview
Listen,
coming up. How do I make sure I'm in the right headspace?
I'll fall asleep in the middle of Raw. I'm not gonna lie. I will. It's a long ass show. That's a long ass show. So there was a point with the Ringer specifically where I was writing something every 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like it was a lot. I think we um we did the thing with Lita, and the thing with Lita is actually the last thing I've done with the Ringer, even though I got some really cool ideas for All In. We were on the phone. I'm texting AEW like, yo, all right, we gotta let's set this up now so
I
that we
wish
can
I
work
was
on it for a
going
couple
so
of
bad.
weeks. Like, yeah, yeah. Oh, you're not going?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. We might have to fix that. But anyway, um, so with the Ringer, we sat back and we kind of looked at it and we were like, yo, we want to shift the content that we're doing a little bit because we want these things to last, right? But I think that the thing with Sting, the thing with Danielson, I'll say Starks, Bianca, and I'll even say Dax. Because I've loved everything I've done, but those things really resonate with me personally, right? So of course, like literally when I got the call from Cal at the Ringer, my editor, I literally texted Rick like 2 minutes later. Rick, they hired me at the Ringer. We got to talk, like immediately, right? And then he put me on the phone with my man Danny, who is AEW's media guy. Put me on the phone with Danny. I tell Danny my idea. It's great, and it was cheating because I've been writing the Ricky Stark story for a year and a half in my head, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that was cheating. But like Carmelo, it was great. Of course, Great American Bash was in Austin on Sunday, like last week. And so me being me, I texted Mello on Saturday and was like, hey, you want to come watch this Spence Crawford fight? The sneaker boutique I like had a fight party. And he was like, yo, I'm just gonna lift here at the gym. I'm gonna get my mind right. I'm gonna get ready for the match. And of course, they killed it, him and Dragunov.
Oh
So
yeah.
after the match, I'm in like the second row off the aisle. Mello comes up to me, daps me up, gives me a big hug. He's like, I told you, Cam, I told you. And I wanted to say, yo, you're sweaty as hell. Please don't touch me. But that's my man. So, like it was great. But Mello was super personal for me because when we did Wale Mania last year, all the wrestlers are in VIP in the green room backstage. I see Mello and I start to walk over to him. I notice he's walking over to me. He looks at me and he's like, "Oh shit, it's the younger me." And I was like, "Oh shit, okay." So I didn't know he knew who I was. Just from being, and this is before the Ringer. This is just social media, and
Mm.
so that was really personal for me because I look at him like little brother nephew, just in the sense of he saw similarities in us. So when I interviewed him for the Ringer, um, we have a really good conversation, and then he reads what I wrote, and he immediately hit me. He was like, "Cam, thank you so much, like for making me look so good. Like I never even thought about this stuff the way that you put it together." So that one really sticks with me because again, like I, I never aspired to be a wrestler, but you see similarities in you and people and style and the way that they see the world. With Dax, you wouldn't think of me and Dax Harwood as similar people, but we're both kids originally from that DMV Carolina area who graduated college into a recession. And so the way that we have to go out and get it is different because we grew up being told that you just go to college and you're going to have a great job and you'll never have another problem in life. Find out the world don't work like that, right?
Yeah.
A great conversation. I love how he thinks about family. And there's a moment just in our interview where he stops to talk to his wife about what they're getting for dinner. And it was so genuine. You know what I mean? Of
Mm.
course, with Bianca, when I wrote about Kofi, it was about how WWE has always aspired to have like the all-American black athlete as a top babyface. And they got it with Rock, but that comes with its own American issues about who's black enough and this and that. They
Mm.
tried it with a bunch of people. They tried it with Lashley early. It didn't work out the way they wanted. They tried it with Shelton early. It didn't work out the way they wanted. Lo and behold, it was Bianca the whole time, right?
Yeah.
And the way that she deals with loss is incredible to me. She's an incredible spirit, man. She's great. Um, and then Sting, it's Sting. Like I've done all these interviews, the only two people I've talked to for an hour, and people have time constraints, so I'm not saying anybody cheated me out of time. Sting took an hour to talk to me. You know, Danielson took an hour to talk to me and to really get into the thick of it. And
Yeah.
so I think the way that I avoid burnout is because I'm so interested in these people who produce the thing that I love. When I went to WWE Media Day for WrestleMania, man, it was just like I got to tell people about what their peers think of them. Like I got to tell Shayna about how much Bianca's mom loves her. I got to tell Gable about how much Dax loves him, right?
Mm.
I got to apologize to Ricochet about thinking his car was the Uber and running up on his car and him being mad about it. It
There's a
was
story there. There's a
yeah,
story
the
there.
I think what keeps me interested is I do not consider myself to be the talent. I
Mm.
do not consider myself to be on par with the wrestlers. But, when I look at people like Stephen A. Smith and Michael Wilbon and Andreas Hale on the fight side, like they are very much a part of the totality of the experience. And a big part of that is the level of comfort that the talent has with them. And
Yeah.
so I'm building like relationships and in some case friendships. Like me and MJF became cool over the pandemic off of a misunderstanding. And like that's my man. And so like we can just talk about stuff sometimes. And so
Mm.
watching him, work at the highest level in the business right now is great to see because I know what's going through his head. I know what he's going for. So yeah, man, I think the psychology of the whole thing is what really keeps me from burning out because it's always a new story to tell.
That's very cool. So you talked about there all the wrestlers you've got to spend time with and stuff. Who has been your craziest like pinch me moment? How did I get here when it comes to being within the media?
Yeah. I mean, Steve Austin is, I it's so hard to explain what that means to a kid from South Texas, you
Hmm?
know, biggest star in the business, used to live 30 minutes from me. And a girl I went to high school with used to hang out at his ranch all the time. And I was so jealous, right?
Oh wow.
And so, yeah, so we got to meet. Like when I interviewed him, we immediately, I brought up her name and he was like, man, that's crazy. And so he knew her. Steve Austin is it's just on a different level. Probably more currently, uh MVP was a really big deal for me because of where he came from and what he is now.
Mm.
You know, like really turning your life around and watching. um One of the most interesting things is always sitting back and watching how wrestlers treat other wrestlers. You know, when we were at Sirius, we did a show with them. My man, me and Phil Lindsay from Grapsity,
Oh,
we
what a guy.
wrote.
Shout out
Phil's
to him
great.
if he checks this out. He's been
Phil's
nothing but
amazing.
nice to me. I've actually interviewed all three of the Grab Sleep,
Yeah,
and
he's
they've been
they're
nothing but
great.
nice.
Those are my brothers, man. And Phil is like, Phil will never be impressed by anybody he meets. Phil is just cool, man. The room is never too big for Phil. But me and Phil helped my man Emilio Sparks write a show. And so it was MVP and Omos, Trick and Mello, and Top Dollar and Ashanti. And if you could see the way that these guys just hover around MVP just to listen to him talk, it's the most impressive thing. Like it really is impressive. Meeting Rey Mysterio, like Rey Mysterio without his mask, just like at the hotel kicking it was crazy. You know, Ray's, I've loved Ray since like 1996. He's incredible. And he was just so nice. And I was like, yo, I don't want no pictures. I'm not trying to catch you out of your mask or nothing. And we just chopped it up real quick. So probably, yeah, probably Ray. I feel bad. Like I feel like I'm going to.
Am I gonna get a DM like, damn it, I should have said so and so?
No, nothing like that. No, but really, genuinely, Damian Nelson, man, Damian Nelson, who like a lot of people who listen to this probably don't know, meeting him outside of WrestleCon was the craziest thing. Because he's like way bigger now, like he started lifting weights. So I'm leaving WrestleCon, and I just like, you know, you talking about leaving WrestleCon. I just met Rikishi. Um, I see all the Fatu kids because I had just partied with them and I was bringing them bottles all night at Wale Mania. So we're all like in there kicking it. Naomi saying thank you. Like everybody's super nice. I had never met Danielson. The thing is, Danielson has a manager, like a manager, right? So I had to go through him for the interview. So they're leaving and I see the manager and I'm like, yo, Meech, what's up? He's like, yo, he's like, Brian, like, this is Cam. And he was like, oh, and so if we're all kicking it, everybody's like, he's like, yo, thanks so much. You smoked that. It's really, really cool. Like I saw the Pope, who I was a huge fan of at ECW 2.0. We actually, funny story really quick. Me and him, he knew who I was. He was like, what's up, CEEHAWK? And we're talking. When I get to the airport the next day, he's at the airport. So we just sat there next to each other and talked for like an hour, like at the airport waiting on our plane. It was so cool. But I leave WrestleCon. I'm walking down the street. I see Damian Nelson, not knowing it's him with like three other people. He was like, hey, what's up, man? I don't know who this guy is. So I'm like, hey, what's going on? This and that. We're talking. And he's like, all right, we'll have a good time. I was like, yo, do I follow you on social media? He was like, yes, Cam. It's me, Damian. I look at him. I'm like, I stop, yo. If you go back through my social media, man, if you search my name, search CEEHAWK and the name Damien, Dameon, you will see me take a picture next to him. Like, and I told him, I was like, yo, I would not be doing this if it wasn't for you. Like, maybe I'll meet. I got to say this, and this is like not to be arrogant at all. I do not think there's a wrestler at this point that I would meet in person that I would lose it over. Listen, I've met Jade Cargill twice.
I know what you mean, though. You've got to a point where it's like, this is just part of your,
Yeah,
not
but
part of your
I always
job, but
tell
I know
people,
what I mean.
yeah, I always tell people like when I was at UT, it was only 1% black, like, and that's including the athletes. So, like, do you follow American basketball?
A little bit.
Okay, so PJ Tucker. who most recently won a title with the Bucks, plays for the Sixers, and he like sneaker god in the NBA.
Ah,
Him and I lived in the same dorm my freshman year. Like we
oh
used to
wow.
hang out. Like me and Kevin Durant used to ride the bus together. Like me and Vince Young, you know, national champion, we're friends. So like none of this, you know, like, and it's not to be cool. It's just I was around people when I was 17
Who made
who,
it?
who we knew were going to be millionaires and
Mm.
did become millionaires and are still cool. So like it doesn't, and not that, again, I love wrestling, but like if 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 3 million people a week watch wrestling and I have friends who 10 million people a week watch them, you know what I mean? Like, and it's
Yeah.
not no shade. It's just the room never felt too big for me because at a young age, I was just in a different room. Um, but I told Damien, I said, look, man, like none of this would happen for me if I didn't see you do it the way you did it. Like I just, and he was like, Cam, you're killing it. I was like, yo, thank you. But like, I'm telling you, like, if nobody ever tells you that they did something because you did it first, I have to tell you. So that
Mm.
was my biggest, and literally, I made a face like I was shocked because it was him. It was the guy who, like, I'm doing this because you do it. It was him, man. And again, like he, and not that it's the barometer. Damien got like a quarter of the amount of Twitter followers I do. Literally, more people know who I am than who he is, but like more people know me than my grandfather. My grandfather's the coolest guy to ever live. You know what I'm saying? So yeah,
Yeah.
Damian Nelson. Damian Nelson, Pro Wrestling Report. You are my oh my God, I met you moment. I am going to tell you out loud when this comes out. I'm going to send you the video.
That's very, very cool. So you talked about there you wouldn't be doing this if
Mhm.
this was for if it wasn't for Damien. My brain's stopped there. I do apologize. So if hypothetically something happened and this all ended tomorrow,
Mhm.
what would you want your legacy to be for one in the
Mhm.
wrestling media, but also for two, would you be happy with what you've accomplished?
Yeah, I think to answer the second part first, I mean, as a content creator, um, as a writer, I think I've done more than most people have done, you know? And most is weird, but I think that I have two or three pieces that are going to stand the test of time.
Mm.
Like I really think that the Sting thing is going to stand the test of time, because he gave that to me. You know, I think the Danielson thing, because he's on the back end of his career, and I don't think anybody's ever put his words to paper like that. I think that's going to stand the test of time. You know, so I got some bangers, man. Like and it's not even to be arrogant. They gave of
You put the work
themselves
in, man. Like,
for sure. But they gave of themselves in a way that I think I specifically was built to translate. You
mm,
know, like it was for me to put to paper. Yeah. If it all ended today and this was not a thing that I had anymore, I had some amazing moments. It's been, you know, it took me 12 years to become an overnight success. Because
mm, yeah,
you know, you still get who the fuck is this guy, right? It
yeah.
took me 12 years to become that. But yeah, man, the journey was amazing. And really, why I would be happy if it ended tomorrow, I've got to like put money in people's pockets for them to do some cool stuff. You
Mm,
know, like when like edited by Laura. She's a producer for Fox Sports in Australia, huge AEW fan, huge Ricky Starks fan. And I looked up some of her video packages and I was like, yo, we should do this together. Like, you should make the video. I'll put the words to it. Let's do it. And so what happened was she's been making dope videos, but I got to use my cachet, my followers, my visibility to help a creator who, even though she's doing great in her career, has not been able to get seen on the creative side. You
mm.
know what I mean? Like, I've got to pay artists to make graphics. I dog, I'm in PWI. Like, I used to read PWI at the food bonanza, sitting down Native American style, and check yourself, because my mom wouldn't buy the magazine. So I would just sit down and read it. And I'm in PWI. My mother, who would not buy me PWI, when they whenever you write for PWI, they'll send you two physicals, right? I
Mm.
sent one to my grandmother, one to my mother. My mother, when I came home for like Christmas a year ago, framed my Alley Cat article for me,
Mm.
right? Like, I got that forever. I got to write about Hyon and Rachel Rose. Hyon wrestles for ROH right now, and right now she's in England killing it. Rachel Rose, she's the Inspire AD champion. They're both Booker T students. They were just here. Rachel was just here last weekend supporting Roxanne because they all train together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, I got to write about two great women talents in Texas and really tell their story in a way that's never been done. If my hands are gone tomorrow and I can never type again, I think I left a little bit of a legacy, man. I think that, again, I got some pieces that I do not think I'm the best wrestling writer. It's nice to hear people say that. I don't think I'm the best. Too many people have been doing it too long for me to do this for a year and be the best at it. But what
Mm-hmm.
I do think is nobody's ever approached it the way that I have. Nobody's ever put the words together like I have. I am content being unique outside of being the best. So yeah, I gave the game something different. You know what I mean? I gave the game something different. Um, what was the first question?
I actually do not remember now, and that sounds
Yeah.
very bad, but I do not remember
No,
because
it's
I was so
cool. But
enthralled in
yeah,
what you were saying.
I think if I had to say again, I think it might have been just what my legacy was. Um, I think that I gave the game something different. I am the details stick out to me. People's quirks, their the things that bother them, the things that they enjoy. That's really what I care about, and the why that you do it, what got you here, is what I really care about. So, like as we're talking, I'm thinking about All In, and I reached out. I don't want to spoil it because like sometimes these things don't come to fruition. But if you read between the lines, All In really has one match that's been announced, and you know I know those guys.
Yeah.
One of them I talk to pretty regularly. The other guy, I hung out with at Wale Mania in the green room, and we hit it off. We're joking, we're having a good time. We're comically laughing about the size of this gigantic champagne bottle that I'm carrying around all night. But between the two of them, I think they're two of the best going right now, and I've been following them both for a very long time, and I think I can present a story in a way that it hasn't been done. So yeah, man, I think that my lasting legacy is Cam did it different.
Mm.
Cam did it different than we've seen it done, and that's why we appreciate him. Because I want to when I write and when I pod or even when I'm just tweeting, I want you to feel like you're sitting next to me when we're doing it.
Yeah.
That's what I want you to feel like. I want to be like I'm Mr. Rogers, man. You know what I'm saying? This is our neighborhood. But I want you to feel like you're right there with me. And I think I've done a good job of cultivating that as a personality and as an art style.
Mm. I understand what you're saying completely there. We've been going for nearly an hour and 20 minutes, my friend, and I do want to be respectful of your time. So before we do generic questions and the wrap up question, who is still on your bucket list of wrestling media or wrestling or wrestlers
Yeah.
maybe that you're like, I would love to work with them before it's all over?
Yeah. Ron Simmons jumps out. Um, I met him briefly at WrestleCon. Ron Simmons is he's a pioneer and he's seen it all. I think that would be a fantastic conversation. Um, I think that I'd love to talk to Kenny Omega. Because I think that people, if you speak positively about WWE, you have to hate AEW, right?
Hmm.
I'd love to talk to Omega about what he thinks his legacy is and
Hmm.
about what he's created. I think that would be great. Hangman Page, I think, is going to be even bigger than he is right now. I'd love to have a conversation with him. Um, it's funny. So I did the Steve Austin thing, and that's when like people who don't care about wrestling talk to you and they think it's the dopest thing. Like, yo, so when you gonna talk to The Rock? I don't want to talk to The Rock. Like, about what? And that's no disrespect to him, but he's at such a level, I do not think we could have a genuine conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and there's no shade, like it's cool. I told Jay Uso that we really need to uh we need to chop it up, because I just think he has this amazing story to tell outside of the story that he's telling. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Yeah, Victoria was my childhood crush, man. Victoria. I
Mm.
actually did meet her at Comic-Con. We were supposed to do something together years ago. It didn't come together. But she's way up there. There's a bunch of names, man. Shelton Benjamin. I'd love to um the entire trio of the New Day. I've interviewed Kofi. Me and Big E, like we've had dinner together. We've had walked out of the dinner to go have a long conversation. But it would be like fun to talk to him. So there's so many names. But yeah, who sticks out? Ron Simmons is immediately the one where I'm like, yeah, I really want to have a conversation with you. Probably him. Rey Mysterio's up there, Victoria's up there, and I think we're going to get more names as the years go on for sure.
I understand what you're saying completely. What about in the wrestling media space? Who do you want to see work with, and who do you think deserves their flowers that maybe they're not getting right now?
Yeah. So what's crazy is like I think everybody you can think of, I pretty much work with, man. Like, uh, I don't think me and Ryan Satin are going to sit down and talk. Um, and that's a different conversation. He's perfectly fine with me. Ain't no beef. But Andreas Hale, my man from the Sporting News, who's ringside at every fight and interviews all the fighters like boxing. He's amazing. Um, I'd love to like really work on a project with him. Not just have a conversation, but like a full-fledged project. But me and Sean, we've done stuff together. I came up under Wade Keller, under Bruce Mitchell, under Sean Radican. So all that's there. Just about all the content creators, we're kind of, even if we're not on the same level, we're in the same rooms.
I know
You
what you
know, so
mean.
so
Yeah.
nobody, the newer people like Muscle Man Malcolm and Stephanie Hypes and Steve Fall, like those are the people who I'd love to do stuff with as they come up in the game.
Mm.
But pretty much everybody in media who I've wanted to work with, like me and Peter Rosenberg are technically coworkers. Everybody I can kind of work with them. So for me, it's more the younger people who are coming up that I want to see their stuff really come to fruition. I really want. I hope we get Chris from Tiger Driver back. Like I really do. Smart kid, had a great idea with great momentum. I think that life tends to slow us down in certain ways, and I can't wait until he is whole and the situations that didn't pan out are made whole so he can come back and do some stuff. I think that's going to be really exciting. But yeah, man, everybody I want to work with is like under 30 or has been doing this for under 5 years. So yeah.
Mm. I know what you mean. That's
Mhm.
very cool. But I also think I find this when I interview smaller channels, and I don't know what you'll think of this, but like it's good to know that in, say, in 20 years, if Sean stepped away or someone stepped away, the wrestling media is in very good hands with people like Muscle and Stephanie Hypes and Steve Ford and people like
Yeah, man. That's why whenever you see me tweet new rules, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these new kids who are doing it, man. Listen, I did Botchamania. I did Botchamania sitting next to a fireplace, reading an excerpt Hardcore Holly's biography. That's as high as you get. You know what I mean?
What
Like,
was how did that come about then to be on Botchamania? And was that a moment that you were like, okay, I've made it?
yeah, yeah, it was, man. It was. I was at my homegirl's house. I was like, yo, we got to set up the camera. We got to record it like this. We got to do this. Matthew was just cool, man. Like he's somebody who keeps his ear to the street. You know what I mean? I think I found out at the first Wale Mania that my name was kind of ubiquitous in the wrestling community because I was surprised how many people knew who I was. You know what I mean? So I think during the pandemic, um, it's kind of like it's like street ball, where like take away the scheme, take away the uniforms, take away the clock, take away the fans. Can you shoot or not?
Yeah.
Right? Can you shoot or not? You don't have access to go to these shows. You're not creating out in public. Can you be funny and interesting and engaging by yourself? And I think I found out that people thought I was. You know what I'm saying? That's how they perceived me. And so Matthew was one of the early adopters, and he was like, "Yo, I want you to be on the show. This is what I want you to do." And that was it. So yeah, man, I think like in what we do specifically, like I don't have the desire to be on ESPN. I watch ESPN and read ESPN and listen to them every day, but like my goal was not to be famous writer. My goal was to do dope shit. You know what I'm saying? And it don't get no more doper than being on Botchamania, you know? Yeah.
I that does sound very cool. I'm not gonna lie. Before we do generic questions and the wrap up question, as someone that's well known in the wrestling media and has done their own interviews, as someone that's still trying to find their voice and bits like that, where can I improve? Things like that, my friend.
I think and this would be like kind of universal. The way that you talk to your friends is more or less how you should talk to the talent. More or less. And what I mean is like, of course, I got a foul fucking mouth, right? So I'm not using that word or other words when I'm interviewing the talent, but I am talking to you like we're kicking it. You know what I mean? Like when I talked to Tiffany Stratton, the first thing I said was, "Yo, are you aware of all the nicknames you have on the internet?" And she was like, "No." I was like, "Oh, no, probably because I made them all up." And so immediately, like, there's that crossover of what I'm giving social media is also what I'm going to give the talent. I'm going to talk about you like it's a conversation. So what I think is like you can go back and look at this or anything else you've done. The biggest question I would ask myself when the camera's off, when the microphone's off, is this how I'm talking to people? Is this how I sound? You know what I mean? Like one thing that they crave authenticity. They being anybody you interview, they crave authenticity. They will open up if they know they're talking to the real you. Like you look at Muscle Man Malcolm's Weekend.
Oh
I
yeah.
love him. That's my guy. He knows he's a goofball, but he is a goofball when he's not on camera, just like when he is, and they love it. You see that Gunther laughing. You know what I mean? Like, and it's because he's being himself. He's bringing himself to the table. Listen, if you are a decent person, it's hard for people to genuinely dislike you. And you don't have to be extra. You don't have to put on. But if they're getting the real you, you're more or less going to get the real them. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that would be the biggest thing I say, man. Just review the tape and not just mine, anybody you talk to and say, hey, is this the way that I sound on here? Is that how I sound out in the wild?
Yeah.
And
I
that
know exactly
that
what you
that can
mean.
carry you, man. Being authentic. Like, what's your cousin's name that I love so much? Um, what culture? The what culture boys. I
Oh
love
yeah.
them, man. I love them. They are quirky and they're funny and they're engaging and they don't because I was with them a couple of times in LA. They're not putting on no fronts. You know what I mean? They mind their business. They when they do talk to you, it's warm and it's engaging and it's a thank you and a please. And that's really appreciated, just being themselves. And that's how they get the max amount that they can out of talent that they interview because they know that they're getting the guys who they are genuinely, for sure.
Hmm. I understand what you're saying completely there. I try and be genuine, but it's
Mm,
like sometimes I think with the Zoom thing, it's like the
mm.
delay sometimes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's why. Hey, listen, when we first got on Zoom, like when the world first shut down, I was having like content creator happy hours on Zoom, like, and we just sit back and shoot the breeze. I also like working in education. I'm on Zoom every day, so you know what I mean. Like, if it has to be natural for me because at this point it's muscle memory. But yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Like, it takes some time, especially this being the format. But what I would say, man, like whatever you're interested in locally, go interview somebody and just put the camera up and just sit down with them and see what your body language is and what your reaction time is with stuff like that. And it gets easy. It gets
Hmm.
easier because you're going to feel more natural as you get the repetitions for sure.
Hmm. I've been doing this for 2 years, but I will say that on
Yeah,
advice because it's definitely one of those where it's like I will definitely do that. But I really
absolutely.
appreciate your time today. We've done nearly an hour and a half, my friend, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate you being so open and things like that. But as we wrap this up, Cam, we're going to do a segment that I call generic questions. Those of you that have seen my interviews before will know this for ask my guest their favorite match, favorite overall pay per view, such as, for example, Double or Nothing 2019, favorite wrestler's entrance theme, favorite tag team, and favorite wrestler. Basically, questions that Cam might get asked on social media. So now he'll have a place to be like, I've answered this. Please go watch this. So, what's your favorite overall match?
Favorite overall match, Angle HBK WrestleMania 21.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Why?
it's stellar. I think it is like this perfect blend of athleticism and sports entertainment and trying to show that I'm better in a way that very few wrestling matches capture. Like, it wasn't just to win, it was to showcase talent. I think that it is one of the best outside of being a favorite, I think it's one of the best American wrestling matches ever between two of the best American wrestlers ever. That is my favorite match.
What about your favorite overall pay per view?
Favorite overall pay per view. That's always difficult. Probably WrestleMania 19. I think WrestleMania 19 is this incredible combination of top talent in the world at their peaks, right? Like, you have Jericho HBK, you have Rock Austin in their finale, you have Lesnar Angle. There's just talent up and down the card at a level where I don't think we'll ever see again.
Hmm.
That's my favorite pay per view.
Just to let you know, your favorite overall pay per view is the same as Sean Ross Sapp's.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the only thing we have in common. Him and his hot dogs. He's a weird guy.
Yeah, that's quite funny. What about your favorite overall wrestler's entrance theme?
Favorite entrance theme. So what's weird, like, I have like an auditory issue. I think it's from, I don't know, maybe it's from who I used to date. Like, I used to watch wrestling like on mute and be playing like a game on the side. So like that's always tough. I love, I say all that to say Hollywood Rock is my favorite entrance theme.
Hmm.
It's amazing how they flipped that sound and just the way that the building was framed by that song and the Hollywood helicopter going over top. Hollywood Rock is my favorite entrance theme. But I couldn't give you five. Like, I love Glorious, I love Shinsuke's entrance, but Hollywood Rock is the one that sticks out for me for sure.
Hmm. Fair dues. Who are your favorite wrestling tag team?
Favorite tag team. Whew. Um, I mean, nowadays it's the Usos. That they've been my favorite for a while. I think that they have a level of authenticity about them that I've always appreciated. But especially, listen, American Alpha showed up and the Usos I feel like they felt like they were going to get pushed down the card, and they just turned it to another level. They started dressing different, talking different. The intensity was there. It's definitely them. Classically, I used to love the Steiners. Used to love Harlem Heat. So those are probably my two like old school tag teams. But yeah, the Usos, I think are the best tag team ever in WWE. I consider the New Day a trio, so that's a little difficult. But yeah, the Usos, that would be them.
You did give me a classic one there, which was the Steiners
Mhm.
as well as the Usos. So what we do when someone gives me two, Cam, is we fantasy book this,
Okay.
and so you get to pick when did when did this match happen? Because we have a DeLorean. When did this match happen? The Steiners versus the Usos. Where's it happening and who wins?
Yo, 1996 at Super Brawl. It's like a February March pay per view, right? It's Super Brawl. I would love to see them at like, I have no idea how racist bikers feel about Samoans, but them at like a Hog Wild or a Road Wild outdoors, just going at it. Oh, I'd love it, man. That'd be great. Um, yeah, that I'd have. I'd do something crazy like I'd probably have the Steiners win with a top rope Steiner Bulldog, I guess. That'd be great, man. Now I'm gonna plug that into 2K. I gotta see that match now.
Yeah, definitely. And then finally, as we wrap this up, Cam, who's your favorite wrestler of all time?
Favorite wrestler of all time, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon. He he was cool, man. He was cool. The we did the show that Conrad had in Dallas, where it was like Jeff Hardy, Jeff Jarrett, Eric Bischoff, somebody, yeah, Jeff Hardy, Jeff Jarrett, Eric Bischoff, Conrad, um, somebody else was there. But
Mm.
basically, after we did the scrum, I go up to Eric, we're just off to the side, and I'm like, yo, I didn't want to ask this because, I don't want to ask you about people who have passed away in front of a large audience because I don't feel like that's fair. But I was like, yo, is there anybody in wrestling right now who you see could ever be as cool as Scott Hall? He said no. He said no, it's impossible, man. You can't teach how cool Scott Hall was. He was my guy since WWF Superstars when he was, driving Jeff Hardy through the mat back when that was a thing, right? So loved him as Razor Ramon, loved him as NWO Scott Hall. Loved that before he passed away, he really got to tell his story to ESPN. And I've interviewed Jake the Snake and Diamond Dallas Page, and the only regret that I'll ever have really in all of this, I'll never get to have a conversation with Scott Hall. And I think that keeps me humble in that the thing that probably would have been the coolest to me, that's not going to happen. And so I got to keep making cool shit. I mean, I got to keep trying to make it cool. But yeah, Scott Hall is absolutely my favorite wrestler of all time. Rest in peace, Scott Hall.
Definitely. You brought up there making cool S word because I don't swear. You brought up
I
there making
respect it.
cool S word. So I believe the question I in all my interviews on Cam is I believe as content creators, we're all gonna sort of live forever in some sort of very strange way, if you think about the word. So what is one piece of content you're like, I'd love to be remembered for that? And then what is one that you're like, forget that from your brains, please, people. I don't want to be remembered for that.
Yeah. Probably like to be remembered. It's probably writing about Ricky Starks in that is based off of a friendship. Like it's really based off. It, I kind of feel bad sometimes because I I put unfair expectations on him, and what I mean is my best friend passed away February of 2021,
Mm-hmm.
and we were we were best friends since like 2003. Like we were tight. We lived together at the time of his passing. It was tough. It's still tough. And me and Rick started hanging out October of 21. And we became really close. And clearly, like we made money together. But outside of any of that, like we really hang out and get together and talk about life in the world. And the fact that I got to tell the world about my friend um, in a way where I've never got to tell anybody about a friend in like a long form for a major publication where like I can tell you about my best friend, right? But thousands, tens of, well, hundreds of thousands, um, got to hear about what makes my friend tick, what drives him, and what he wants out of life. And so I want that to be the piece that I created where you don't only see how special he is, but you see how I treat somebody who's special to me.
Mm.
So yeah, that. And then what don't I want you to remember? I got some duds, not in writing, but like I've tried to make things. I've done like slideshows and YouTube videos, and is there one that sticks out that I kind of don't want people to really pay attention to? Yeah, I wouldn't say that. Um, I don't know. Peep the YouTube channel. Like, there's something there that I'm sure doesn't cut the mustard. Like I could have been better to Alex Kane, not in the interview, but in the presentation. Like I I got a really good buddy who works for Canva, so that's why the Tiffany Stratton interview looks way better than the Stone Cold and the Alex Kane. So I wish I could have done better by Alex. And that's my guy. Like we the thing that I love, not to cut off on tangents, but the thing that I love about what I do is like I never thought I'd see the day where talent come to me about what I think about their promos or an outfit they put together or the moves they want to do. I never thought that would happen. So I love that. Um, most recently, yeah, Alex, I wish I could have done better by you. I might re-upload the video with better graphics, but I love you, brother. So yeah, just I want to do better by the younger talent. That's really what I want to do.
That's very cool to hear. So as we wrap this up, Cam, uh, where can the good people find you, your content, etc.?
Absolutely. So it's
Obviously, I want
Seahawk.
to say thank you for a great conversation as well.
No, thank you, man. Like you talk about what I think you can improve on. You've like nobody's ever asked me this stuff. Like especially like the first half of what we talked about. That was great. I've never got to like tell those stories. That's amazing. Um, but yeah, I think that you're on to something. You're on to something. So it's Seahawk, CEEHAWK. You can find me on IG. You can find me on Twitter, Spill, Threads, whatever. Um, most of like if you're a person who wants to go through the archives and really look at what somebody's made, Pro Wrestling Torch East Coast Cast, we did that show basically from 2010 until December of last year. So if you kind of roughly do the math, that's 12 years, 52 weeks a year. So, like, if you want to hear me talk about wrestling for 600 episodes, you can go to pwtorch.com and just check out the East Coast cast. We got a whole bunch of that. Most you can find me on if you read PWI, I'm in a couple of issues of PWI talking about my girl Alley Cat, talking about High On and Rachel Rose. I love that, like, whatever they've asked me to write about has been about women specifically because we want to highlight every facet of wrestling. Um, fan side at DDT, did a bunch of writing over there. And Fightful has been great to me. Most recently wrote about some of the really the coolest matches in Great American Bash history, as well as an interview with Steve Austin and talking about WWE's NIL program. Um, wait. No, Steve Austin. There was one other thing. We'll figure it out. But most notably, you can find me at theringer.com. Just search the name Cameron Hawkins. I have talked about Ricky Starks, Carmelo Hayes, Bianca Belair, Booker T, which was bucket list. I love Booker. Dax Harwood, Sting, Brian Danielson, Lita, Tony Storm, Jake the Snake Roberts. I've done a lot over there. So that's where you can really find me, I think, fully fleshed out as far as my words, allusions to things, links to things, the best graphics you're going to see. TheRinger.com, just search the name Cameron Hawkins. That's where you're going to find kind of my most notable stuff. But yeah, I'm everywhere, man. I'm everywhere doing everything. So yeah.
Like I say, one of probably the hardest working people I've ever got the chance to chat to. but one of the nicest as well. So obviously, I want to say thank you to Cam for a great conversation. If you guys like this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talk Trash on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at Tom Talk Trash, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye now.